Yeah, good question. And I hope my dad never listens to this podcast because he's been talking about this for years. And we've never done it. So he's always says we need a list of appliances in each unit, what year they were purchased, so we can go into that unit, via Google Docs and see when. How old is the refrigerator? If the tenant's calling and saying their refrigerator isn't working, do we send a repair guy or do we send a new refrigerator? If it's 10 years old, you send a new refrigerator. If it's 1 year old, you send a repair guy.
It is a common saying amongst real estate investors that you make money when you buy, not when you sell. While this catchy phrase has value, it fails to convey how easy it is to lose money through poor property management. Whether you self-manage or hire a professional, it is important to understand how to navigate the common pitfalls and challenges with rental properties without losing your shirt or your mind. That's why you have tuned in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. I'm your host, John Stiles, real estate agent and team leader of the VIP Real Estate Group at Bridge Realty. As a current multifamily investor and former property manager myself, I understand the headaches and difficulties of keeping an investment property from becoming a money pit and time sucker. It takes a solid business plan, it takes tested systems, and it takes key team members to actually find success. So let's take a deep dive and maximize your property value.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Maximizing Your Property Value. My name is John Stiles with Bridge Realty, and I'm excited for another great episode. I'm excited today to introduce you to Brian Doyle, who is with Doyle Property Group. Brian purchased his first house while he was in college and rented that out to roommates. And then he has since then grown his portfolio of properties to 65 doors, all while having a day job. So Brian, thanks so much for coming into the studio today.
I love it, John. Thanks for inviting me, man. This is fun.
Wonderful. So, Brian, why don't you fill in the gaps a little bit there and tell our audience, how you got started in real estate and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So my story is if you go way back, I love this story, but if you go way back, it's I really learned that I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was in Cub Scouts. Back in the day, they said whoever sells the most popcorn wins a bike, and I was like, man, I'm going to win that bike, and everybody said you can't do it, and I did it, and I realized at that moment that it's like if you're an entrepreneur and you're in control of whatever you do, the sky's the limit. You know what I mean? If you're an employee, which is also fine, but if you're an employee, then your max is your per hour wage or whatever. You know what I mean? As an entrepreneur, you can hire people, you can grow, you can shrink, you just have a lot more options. And that's what I really did learn that in Cub Scouts, believe it or not, when I was like 12. So
good to start early.
Yeah, no, it was super fun. So I guess what happened after that was then I went to college and I really wanted to start my own business. And a lot of the great businesses in the world have been started when people are in college. So, I think if anybody's listening to this and they have college-age kids or high school-age kids, or maybe they're in high school or college themselves, really, you've got an opportunity that's like this golden time in your life that you'll never have again as far as I'm concerned, That's not to say you can't start it with a family and do all that other stuff, because there's other ways to do it that we can talk about. But, when you're in college, you've got almost no expenses. You have the ability to live off ramen, and you can invest your money, and you can start a business. And if you fail, so what? Like, you had no money to start with, so your worst case scenario is you have no money after the business fails. So like you're already in your worst case scenario, right? So why not go for it and do something fun and go for it. So that's what I did. I decided, I was like, I want to buy a house and I want to rent it out to my friends. And my friends got a great deal and I got a great deal because I lived for free. My friends were paying below market rent. My parents got a great deal because they didn't have to pay for my rent, and I liked real estate. And the reason I liked real estate is because if you buy a stock and it's underperforming, there's not much you can do. You can either buy it or sell it, right? But if you if you have real estate and it's underperforming, you can paint it. You can go over there and mow the lawn. You can go weed. You can plant some bushes. And then you just have infinite number of possibilities on how to, increase that asset's value. And that's why I like real estate so much. So
Nice.
yeah.
So then how did you grow that portfolio after college, and how quickly did you grow it?
Well, I grew it pretty slow because I think you need to grow slow. I don't think you need to grow slow at the beginning, but I think I did. And the reason I did is because real estate's also the problem with the benefits are you can fix it up and do that. The problem with real estate is that it's expensive, right? I mean, like to buy another asset right now, another condo or whatever is like $100,000, or something like that. That's a lot of money, right? So you do have to go slow at the beginning because you don't have the money to grow faster. At least I didn't, right? So my next house that I bought was my girlfriend's house. So I had a girlfriend that was living in a house with a landlord, and the landlord came over a couple times to try to fix a leak that was in the bathroom. It was leaking from the bathroom to the kitchen, And the landlord comes over and he's so angry. He comes over and he's fixing this leak and he fixes it again. He's fixing it for the third time. He's yelling at the tenants. And I kind of just started talking to him. I said, well, why don't I buy this house from you? And I'll fix the leak. And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to sell this house. His situation was, and I think there's a lot of people like this in the world, is that he had bought a house for his kid in college. And then his kid moved out after college, and he decided to hang on to it as a rental. Well, he was never set up to be a landlord. He didn't really enjoy being a landlord. He lived in the cities, and this was in Duluth, so he's 3 hours away from the property. It was a big house. There's a million reasons why he wasn't a good fit for this house. Like, it worked for him, but now he wanted to get out. So it's kind of a perfect thing. And what I learned from that story that your listeners can learn is that it's like, dude, every house is for sale. Every single house is for sale. Just go ask them if they're willing to sell. And let's say people move on average of every 10 years. I mean, I don't know what the statistic is. Do you? Is it 7?
I would say 7 probably.
Okay, so every 7 years, okay? So listen, just think about that. If I go knock on 7 doors, okay, that means every 7th house I knock on, those people are thinking about moving that year. If I'm doing the math right, you know what I mean? So it's like, why not? I'm not positive that math is right, but it's something like that, right? So it's like, honestly, it's like, go out and talk to people and ask them, hey, are you interested in selling? And if you're interested in selling, let me tell you why I'd be a good buyer for it. So
yeah.
So that's how I bought my second one.
Okay.
So
very good. And then so you're sitting at about 65 doors now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what's your kind of plan going forward? Are you continuing in growth mode or?
Dude, good question, Sean. And if you could help me figure that out, I'd appreciate it because for like the last year, maybe 2, I have been struggling to figure out my plan, right? I'd love to get to about 300 doors. Okay. 300 doors, I think, would be a good number because you can afford a large enough staff to really step away. Okay. At 60 doors, you can hire a staff where you can mostly step away, but you're still kind of overseeing everything, right? Yeah. 300 doors, I think you could hire a president and vice president of leasing and a vice president of, maintenance and things like that. Okay. So that's my goal is 300 units. But like we were talking before, the prices are up there, really up there for multifamily. So that doesn't mean you can't make it work. There's a bunch of people that are making it work, but like I don't see the numbers working right now for big multifamily. So what does that mean for me? I own a bunch of condos. I think I'm going to go back to buying condos again. I think there's a lot of opportunity in, smaller smaller single family deals. I think there's a lot of opportunity in college towns because there's a lot of owners that that have bought a house for their kid and their kid moved on, just like I bought with that other guy. And I think if you called enough people, you'd eventually run into those sellers.
Yeah. And then just give us a brief picture. So you've mentioned condos. Is that the majority of what you own?
Yeah, I was just looking at this the other night. So I think I own 49 condos. So of that 65, a large percentage is condos. The rest are, I own a small 7-unit apartment building. I own investments in other people's buildings. Friend of ours has a property in Lexington that I have a small ownership share in, and another gentleman from the cities here. I have 4 or 5 units, 4 or 5 buildings with him that I'm a limited partner on.
Okay.
So
very good. And then, so the condos that you own entirely, are those primarily here in Minneapolis Metro, or are they spread out elsewhere?
They're primarily in just 2 associations, believe it or not. Okay. So, and that's the other thing why I think a lot of people maybe, I don't know your listener base yet, right? But I think a lot of people are trying to get into apartments, or get into investments, right? Which is awesome. I think they should get into investments. And I think they should rip the Band-Aid off and just do it, even if they're overpaying for their first one, because I think that first one's the hardest, right? But this is the advantage, right? After you buy your first one, like I bought one in a place called Hidden Park Condominiums in 2008. And since then, I've become the president of the association. I'm really involved with it. I've talked on all the neighbors. I say, hey, if you're interested in selling, I'm buying. You know what I mean? So I think I have like 19 units in just that association alone. And that's why I think it's such an advantage to, after you buy one, go talk to the neighbors, and their neighbors and their neighbors. And that's why condos are so cool, because they're so easy to evaluate too. Like I know I bought this 1-bedroom for $50,000. This other one bedroom right next door is totally remodeled. That means it's worth $60,000, or it's totally trashed, and that means it's worth $45,000. It's just so easy to dial in the numbers, right? And the other big association I own, another a block of 20 or so in, is Meadow Creek Condominiums in Hopkins. So I think they're both good associations. They both have their pros and cons. The problem with condos is that there's a lot of other owners around you. If you own one apartment building, then you have a neighbor on both sides, right? If you own a condominium, then you've got other people making decisions on the roof and the association dues and the reserve requirements, all this other stuff that you have out of your control. So there's pros and cons, but I like them.
Yeah. So you've kind of combated that by just buying the whole building almost, or buying several of the units?
Yeah, that would be there is a guy named Joe Knapp, I think is his name. I can get it for you if you want. But he actually did buy every condominium in a condominium complex in Hopkins and converted it back to an apartment building.
Okay.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
Both those associations, one has the one I have 20 units in, it has like 450 units. So I think it'd be pretty hard to buy all those. And the other one has 68 units. So I'm about a third of the way there. But so that'd be hard also. But here's the other thing I'll tell you about condos real quick. They're cool because they're easy to trade to. I mean, a lot of people not a lot of people, but a lot of people are willing to buy $100,000 something, right? If I own a $10 million something, there's less people out there that want to buy that, If I own a $100,000 something, I can, walk down the street and say, hey, you want to buy this $100,000 thing? And that's luckily, I think I could sell it. So
yeah, very good. Well, listen, what I want to talk about next is having a business plan for your rental properties. I'm not sure if you have, actually written anything down for yourself.
Yeah.
But maybe that's my first question. Have you created a written business plan for your properties?
I don't know if I've ever written a business plan, but I love the start with the end in mind philosophy, right? You got to know where you're going. And that's why I've struggled so much in the last couple of years, because I'm floundering. I don't know where to go, right? I've actually, in the last few months, or maybe even year, I've really, really buckled down on my full-time job. So I don't know if I told you that. I have a full-time job. I sell blinds to apartment buildings, and I've absolutely dove headfirst. I've always been headfirst into it, but now I'm like really, really, really diving into it. And that's kind of the fun about having a full-time job, is that if real estate is, kind of overpriced for a little bit, or you haven't found a good deal, it's like, no big deal, just go. I never feel the pressure to do a deal because I got a job. I have a job to work on. You know what I mean? So that's good and bad. It was probably bad in '08, 9, and 10 when I probably should have been 100% focused on real estate. It's probably good now that I don't feel the pressure to do a deal, but back to your plan, right? Here's what I've done for years, okay? The studies that show, okay, that if you have a plan, it's unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable how much more effective people with plans are than people without plans. There's some Harvard study about the Harvard grads that wrote a plan versus Harvard grads that didn't write a plan and their collective net worth. It's just unbelievable, right? But so what I've done is I haven't had a plan as much as I've always done this thing called an action. It's an action plan, right? So I used to get together with 4 buddies in high school, the 4 of my high school buddies. After college, we got together like once a month, and we just wrote down our action plans, okay? We had our month action, our short term, which was a month, our midterm, which is whatever you want it to be, but mine was always like a year, or so. I don't know. It wasn't that rigid, but short term, midterm, and then long term, And the long term stuff was fun, right? Like, it was like, I want to go to Nepal, or, I want to do like, I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff on there, right? But what happens when you write those things down is you get together with your buddies, and the first time you do it, it's easy, right? Because like your action plan is like, well, I got to clean the garage, and things you do need to get done, but like things I need to do, I got to clean my garage. I got to get all those returns sent back to Home Depot and all this stuff, right? About 4 or 5 or 6 months in, all the easy stuff's done, right? Now you're talking about some tough stuff, right? And it might be I want to go on a date with my wife, or something like that. But then what happens is you don't do so you do it on the first. You meet on the first. Nobody does anything until about the 25th, or 26th, and you're like, holy crap! I got to meet with my buddies here, in 4 days. I don't want to be the loser that's like, oh, I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? So then you scramble to get it done, but you're getting it done. So it's so important. So I would say if anybody, else is out there, it's hard to find people that are of like-minded that you can do it with, but go find 2 or 3 or 1 other person that you're willing to do like an action plan with. And then go do it and meet once a month or we meet once a quarter even, Yep. That's an awesome way to kind of hold each other accountable. So
yeah, that's a great example. And I think a lot of people approach their rental properties without a plan.
Absolutely.
Like I put out this question on Facebook the other day and
Yeah.
said, do you have a business plan for your rental properties?
Yeah.
And I got some responses like, make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
just some general things like that, which,
yeah,
of course, that's worked for this guy that mentioned that, he's done it for years and
Yep.
he just makes money at it. But
Yeah.
But if you want to be, efficient, if you want to be successful beyond that, I think you have to write it down and have a plan.
No, I totally agree.
So, what types of things, even though you haven't written it specifically for a rental property, what types of things could you put in to a business plan for your rental property?
Well, I think a plan is super important. Okay, and just because I don't have a daily plan, we do have a lot of systems in place, right? And we do have a goal sheet, right? So my goal is 300 units, right? And I have taken a piece of paper and I've actually written it out. Like, okay, what does that mean? How many units do I need to buy a year to get to that by 55? Okay, I'm 42 right now. I want to have that by 55. Okay, and I think a lot of times people don't write the plan down because they don't I don't want to set myself up for failure. I don't want to guess too high or too low or whatever. My thing is just write it down, and then if it changes, change it. You know what I mean? It's not set in stone, right? So definitely, I think that's a good thing. That's one thing I do. The other thing is I would systematize everything you possibly can. Okay, so before 2008, I would say I really I didn't have that many units. Okay, so like maybe I had 10 units. I don't even know. So so it's like you just kind of just do it. And you just kind of you kind of get through it, right? When you get more units, you realize it's like a lot of the turns are the same. right? And I learned this by going to the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. And actually, one of your former guests was Kurt Flugel, who really taught me all this stuff, right? And I mean, I was up there front row writing all this down because he's Mr. Systematization, right? And really, like every single time a turn happens or somebody gives us their 60-day notice, we create a list. We created just a checklist online on a website called Asana. It's totally free to use. It's asana.com. And we create this online checklist. And it says, 60-day notice. Then it says, place the ad on Zillow. Number 2 is, there's probably 100 things on there. Place the ad on Zillow. Tell the tenant when they owe rent through. Because sometimes we get a 30-day notice, and we're like, sorry, your lease states 60-day notice, or now it states 2 months, actually, because we didn't want to have any confusion on the days, right? We're not renting you an apartment per day. We're renting it to you per month. So it's 2-month notice. So let them know what they owe the rent through. Schedule a preliminary walkthrough, walk through the property and just take a peek at it and just tell them, hey, this and this and this need to get fixed, And if we're gonna move, if they're gonna move out on July 1st, maybe we want new carpet. Well, don't wait till July 1st to order the carpet. Order it now. You know what I mean? Or a new refrigerator maybe they broke, or you just don't know, right? So then you create this entire checklist, and then you have another checklist that says after the tenant is approved. Make sure you have these 5 things signed. And then move out day. Okay, move out day has got 10 things to do. Rekey the lock and get the move out checklist and get the move out checklist signed and do all this stuff. Anyway, so if you have this system, then it's the same every time. Like, why am I trying to remember this? And the other thing that I do with systemization is that there's things that happen every year. Okay. I've been doing this since I was in college, so let's say about 22 years now, okay? Just about 2 years ago, I finally started putting it in Google Calendar in October 1st saying, go to the units, go to the properties, and turn off the outside water. For years, I'd be out there, or my maintenance guy would be out there in December with a blowtorch trying to heat up the pipe so it wouldn't freeze after it's already froze, and then trying to turn off the water. It's just put it in Google Calendar, set an annual reminder. In Google Calendar, it'll say, do you want to send us to send you an email? And then you don't have to worry about anything. It's awesome, So I would say just systematize.
Yeah, that's huge. The shutting off the water spigots for the outside, changing the furnace filters.
Right. I'll put that on my calendar because I don't have that on yet. So yeah, that's a great idea.
There's these things that need to happen on a routine basis.
Absolutely.
So why try to just remember them when you can go through the checklist and just have that be your memory?
I love it. And the other cool thing about Google Calendar is you can write a checklist in Google Calendar. You can attach a file to it, right? So it's like, okay, change the furnace filter, which I'm going to put in my Google Calendar because I guarantee all my furnace filters are like this thick of dust because I haven't done that, So it's like you still learn, right? And you do it once and then you never have to do it again. So then, but then you put a checklist in Google Calendar. Like, how do you do it? Okay, you go and you pull the thing off and whatever, So I love it. Yeah. Very good idea.
By the way, going back to that website you mentioned, was that for making lists? Is that specific to properties or is it just general list making?
It's just a list making website. The other one I've heard a lot about is Monday.com. I don't know anything about that one, but I think it's similar in the fact that it just creates a task list. Okay. So I have a little team, because I have a full-time job, I can't spend a lot of time on properties, right? So I have a little team. I have a full-time office person that just works in the office. And then I basically have a dedicated maintenance guy that is dedicated to my stuff, but he's not necessarily full-time. And then I'm lucky also to have a father that's retired, and he spends a lot of time on my properties as well. So
okay. So you mentioned that now. Does that... are they having access to this list on the website? Or
yeah, it's awesome. So when you go to this asana.com, you go there and you put in, you can do a master list. So like a master list for me is like the 60-day notice list, okay? Another list would be like just like weekly tenant calls, okay? We want to provide good service to the tenants, okay? It drives me freaking crazy that people pay a third of their income to landlords, and we're not treating them like kings. You know what I mean? If you're going to give me a third of your income, John, I'm going to like call you. I'm going to make sure you're happy. I'm going to call you and thank you for paying rent on time. You know, it's like I want to make sure that I'm providing you excellent service because it's a big deal, right? So one of the list is tenant calls. Okay, so a tenant might call and say, "Hey, I can't get my furnace going." Okay, well, it goes right into this tenant call. So then the office person will call the maintenance person and say, "Hey, they can't get their thing going. Can you go check it out?" Okay. Well, it doesn't come off the Asana list unless it's done. You know what I mean? That's why it's like if somebody calls and then I call this other person and then they forget or something like that, then it's like the tenant calls 2 weeks later and it's like, "Dude, I don't have a furnace," But if it gets onto this list, it just never comes off until it's done. So I love that about it. Also, you can her name's Debbie. Debbie can put it in there, and then she can assign that task to anybody. She can assign it to my father. She can assign it to my maintenance guy. She can assign it to herself. And then then you can go on to Asana and just see just the tasks that you're assigned, or maybe it's a group task. And then everybody can put notes in there as well, and you can get it right on your phone. It's awesome. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a great tool to be using.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome.
So, well, why don't we?
And it's free.
What a bonus.
Hey everybody, I'm interrupting the show quick because I wanted to invite you to a special event that I'm hosting at the end of 2019. The end of the year, during the holidays, is a great time to be getting together with friends and family, making new memories, and even new traditions. One new tradition that my family started a few years ago is volunteering at Feed My Starving Children. If you haven't heard of this organization, you should definitely check out their website. It's fmsc.org. Basically, they utilize volunteers to pack nutritious meals, and then they send those meals overseas to different areas of the world that have a significant need for food. These meals have made a huge impact in thousands of people's lives. And I really like volunteering with Feed My Starving Children for two main reasons. Number one, it gives you a tangible way to give back. It's not just giving money, which of course is important, but it allows you to use your time and your energy alongside of other people in a common cause. And number two, it fosters discussion of how we can live our lives serving others and not just be focused on ourselves. And since this is a family-friendly event, it allows us to live out this mindset right along with our children. So would you consider joining me? I've reserved 50 spots, and this is room for you, a friend, a loved one, to join with us and help out the cause. It would be really amazing to see you there. The date, time, and location is in the show notes. There's also a link that allows you to sign up and let us know that you're going to be there. And you can share that link with other people that you think might be interested. So thanks so much for considering it. Now, let's get back to the show.
So why don't we transition into what you've already started to talk about, and that is your management team. A lot of people will hire a third-party management company or do it themselves, or kind of sounds like you're kind of vertically integrating. You've got some staff, or so tell us a little bit of how that has developed for you.
Well, I've like when you own one house, I did everything myself, right? Because one, I'm pretty frugal. I'm kind of proud of my frugality, actually. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that's what's allowed me to grow my business. And with that frugality comes, like, if there's a toilet problem, I go and, YouTube's awesome, right? Like, you can YouTube anything and figure out how to fix it, right? And it's fun to fix it, because then when you fix it, when you feel good, number two, it's like next time when you have to hire a contractor and they say it's a $500 for a toilet, flange, you're like, whoa, that doesn't sound right? So you get some kind of knowledge as far as that goes. So I've grown my people over time, right? So maybe, and again, I think 2008 is kind of when that maybe changed a little bit. But in 2008, it's like, okay, I was busy. I was buying properties. I had my full-time job. I still have my full-time job, and I'm working hard at that. And that's when I think I really hired. I can't remember when I hired my assistant, but I hired her, full-time. Actually, I hired her half-time to start with, I believe. Actually, I know I did. I hired her half-time to start with, and then she lost her client for the afternoons. And so I was like, well, I'll just absorb you, and it's been great, and some days she's busy and really busy, and some days she's probably twiddling her thumbs, which, isn't good, but it is what it is. I mean, you need help in this business, right? It goes back to McDonald's and stuff like that. If the Ray Kroc was flipping the hamburgers, he wouldn't be growing, So that's how I got that. And then as far as maintenance guys go, that's changed a lot over the years. Before 2008, it was really hard to find maintenance people. And then 2008, 9, and 10, I put an ad on Craigslist for $15 an hour, and I'd get 50 emails and people begging me to hire them, And now it's kind of getting harder again. So I think you just got to really, got to treat the people that you work with, like you want to be treated. Most people work hard for people they like, and that's kind of how I've grown that.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about your initial hire, your assistant. How would you describe her role or her responsibilities?
So there I'm learning, you know what I mean? So she, again, that's another one of those Asana things, right? Like you've got to. I think the biggest thing with people, and myself included, is I don't want to hire somebody and then all of a sudden be responsible for keeping them busy, Yeah. Because then it almost becomes another task, And, Joe Fairless, I think his name has the 4-hour work week. He's got a great book on that, He says, one of the things he says is, I try to read a lot of books and then implement them, rather than just reading them. And I did read his book and then I had implemented his strategies. But one of the things he said is like, just give your assistant, and I hate to say assistant because I think she does more than being an assistant. I don't want her to be an assistant. I want her to be her own role, So my property manager, it says give them everything, even things that would be way easier for you to do yourself, right? So like, let's say I want to, run a report and see what cash flow was last year, or last month. I don't know. And, then I'm like, okay, I could do that in about 10 seconds, right? But if I give it to my property manager to do, then she's going to learn how to do it for the next time, So I think that's how, when you're just starting off, how to do it with an employee is to just really give them everything, and then learn as the way. And then when you're learning, go to Asana and write it all out, or go to Google Drive and write it all out. So like we don't escrow any of our property taxes. We pay them all, with a check basically, or direct deposit or whatever that is, ACH. So one of the things she does every May 15th and October 15th is goes to the Hennepin County website or the St. Louis County website, or we have one property in Arizona, and then she writes all this stuff down, or there's just a list. It's just a checklist. It's like, okay, this is what you need to do to pay the property tax. And every time she's doing that. So you just got to systematize.
Nice. Okay. And then you mentioned that you have third-party contractors. Have you hired any like handyman as an employee or not?
Yeah. So one of my best friends from growing up is an employment attorney, and I was we played softball together a lot and broomball and stuff like that and all this fun stuff. And she says, she says, tell me about your maintenance person. I said, oh yeah, he's 1099 and all this stuff. She says, well, does he have the ability to profit or loss off any job? And I said, no. I'm like, he doesn't have the ability to lose on a job. He just pay him per hour. She says, do you dictate his hours? I'm like, no. She says, does he provide his own tools? I'm like, yeah, for the most part. She says, does he bid every job for you, or do you just tell him to do it and then bill you later, And I'm like, well, no, he doesn't, provide me bids or invoices and that stuff. And she's like, dude, you have an employee, And I think, and I mean, like, obviously an employee, right? Like, not even like a little bit, like, and I think that's one thing that is very, very common in our industry. most people hire people as 1099s. And I don't think they're trying to do anything wrong. It's just that they don't realize that the hurdle to go from 1099 to employee is very low. I mean, very low. And so, you know, I want to pretend I'm like a big company. So just act like a big company, you know, just, okay, no big deal. Just so whatever I did like 2-3 years ago, I said, okay, we'll just hire Paychex, you know, or ADP or any of those other companies. But we use Paychex, and it's like, you know, they make it easy. So rather than, you know, making, you know, I don't know what he makes, but like, you know, it probably adds $2 an hour to his salary, which sucks, right? I mean, $2 an hour just for no value is sucks, right? But then you learn about workers' comp insurance, which I had no idea what that was until 2 years ago, right? And workers' comp insurance, for anybody else that doesn't know, is basically insurance if that person gets injured on the job. Okay. Well, he has gotten injured on the job before, like not severely, but you know, like a splinter or something that, you know, that ingrown that he had to get cut out, or maybe stubbed his toe, or not stubbed his toe, but dropped something on his foot that you don't want to make sure that it's not broken. So nothing severe, but like, but the way workers' comp works is all he has to do is go to the you know, urgent care, and they'll treat it, and then he gives them the policy, and it's all covered. It's a fantastic thing. I mean, I know it's more expensive, but it's just worth it.
Yeah,
so.
That's huge. I know back when I was managing properties myself for other people, when we hired third-party contractors, we always had to make sure that they have workers' comp insurance, so that if they get hurt on the job, that they're covered.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just the right thing to do, and it makes it easier, honestly.
Yep. Okay, so you've got kind of an office administrator, you've got maintenance, and then do you have somebody doing leasing, or do you take care of that?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I listen. I fill in when I can, right? But I want to keep that mindset of I don't want to be in charge of anything. It's not because I'm lazy. It's because I know that I'm the first one to jump in and do it, and if I do it, then it's then I'm taking that away from something else. You know, I can't grow if I'm doing everything, right? So I want to kind of almost go the other way and do nothing, you know, because I want to focus on growth, you know, and I want to focus on my full-time job, you know, and things like that. So, so as far as leasing goes, we in New Hope, I hired a person that lives at Hidden Park Condominiums. And she does the leasing for me. She shows the units and stuff like that. In Hopkins, I have another person that'll do the leasing for me. That person has become a little busy with other things, so I'm a little bit strapped for somebody in Hopkins. So my maintenance guy, who's awesome by the way, has stepped up. You know, my dad will step up and show units. If it's like a Saturday or Sunday, I'll run over there and show a unit every once in a while. You know, which is great. And then in Duluth, you know, you don't want to be running up there every time you want a showing, right? So, what we do there is we actually find a current tenant that's living there. We pay him $100 to show the apartment, right? And then my office person will get all the leads from Zillow, and she'll schedule like kind of an open house style thing where she'll say like, okay, on Saturday at 2:00, you know, anybody who's interested will come up. And we'll pay the person $100, not per showing, but per lease period, and then that person will show the apartments. Okay. Now our maintenance guy in Duluth is awesome, but sometimes he doesn't return calls. You know, sometimes he's busy for a couple of weeks because again, I don't have enough units to hire somebody full time. So now all of a sudden, like he's kind of managing another job, and then I'm trying to get my stuff in on the side, right? So that's a struggle, right? And how are you going to handle that? You know. And, you know, so right now we're trying to find a new maintenance guy in Duluth, potentially, you know, and then the maintenance guy can sometimes show it. So as far, I get a little worried, honestly, with our showings, because I think anybody right now in this industry can show apartments and be successful doing it. You know what I mean? I'm a full-time salesperson. You know, I've been a full-time salesperson my whole life. I see how bad we are at leasing, but we're still getting it leased, right? So what do? Then you just try to get better at it every time, right? So that might have to change if the economy goes down.
Okay. Very good. So then just overall, just handling employees and subcontractors, maybe what's your kind of philosophy of dealing with people and make sure that things are running smoothly there?
Well, I don't know if this fits in or not, but maybe it does. I decided a long time ago that I'm going to eat every day. You're going to eat every day for the rest of your life, right? I mean, honestly, I just feel that way. Like, there'll never be a day that I won't have enough to eat, right? Because if, let's say I was dropped off in the middle of, nowhere, right? It's like, I can go fish, I can go, whatever. I mean, we don't have to belabor that topic, but we're going to eat every day, right? So if that's done, then it's like, treat people like awesome, like the way that you want to be treated, right? Like everybody's trying to scrape together like every last penny on some of the stuff, or we give tenants like thank you notes all the time. My son just bought a mountain bike, which totally is irrelated to the industry, but then we wrote the guy that helped us a thank you note and gave him a $25 gift card to a restaurant that he recommended. I mean, it's like things like that. It's like it costs nothing if you look at it as an annual expense, okay? And you just say, hey, I'm going to spend $1,000 or $2,000 a year, and just thanking people like holy crap, dude, like those tenants that are giving you a third of their income. I ran around and bought some turkeys last Thanksgiving, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I mean, you're handing them this huge turkey, it's like in a 1-bedroom apartment. But I remember my first job out of college, my company gave me a $25 gift card to Cub Foods, and I bought a Thanksgiving, and I had all my friends over, and I still remember that. It was awesome, I remember that. So I think you just treat people the way you want to be treated, and it just, like, good things happen. And it's not out of, like, if I do this, then they're going to pay rent on time, It's just that it's, like, it's a lot more fun to go through life it's a lot more fun to go through life working with people than against people, So that's kind of my theory on all of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good. That's really important. Nobody wants to work for Mr. Scrooge. And
yeah. I mean, you just don't, right? Life's too short.
Yeah. Very good. So let's talk a little bit. You've already covered this, but more specifically for tenants, how have you created like a great customer experience for tenants so that they really want to live at your properties? And what does that mean for you? What does customer service mean for you when it comes to tenants?
Well, I love that question because I think it's like the most important thing out there, right? Because I mean, people say this all the time. This isn't a you don't manage buildings, you manage people, right? And honestly, like, I'm always thinking of ways to better improve the customer experience, right? Because I'm in sales, right? And people buy from people they like. There's a lot of apartments out there. People move because they hate their landlord. So I think one of the things you need to do if you're thinking about your own business is that I think you need to have a customer, like a log, like we do, where it says if a customer calls in or a tenant calls in and they say, hey, I want to, my XYZ is broken. I think you got to get back to them, and show them that's an important call. We understand, and we're going to get to it. And then I think you need to follow up afterwards. Okay, you need to follow up and say, hey, did we fix that to your satisfaction? Now, there's some danger in that, right? Because like we have a house in Duluth right now, and they called us up and they said, well, there's raccoons or something living in the attic. I mean, a raccoon's like huge, right? So we're like, a raccoon, holy crap, So we call this company, and they you $100, and they come over and they get rid of the whatever's living up there. Well, it turned out to be mice, like this big. And then we called them back up, the tenant, and then we said, hey, we just want to make sure everything, is fixed to your satisfaction. And and they said, no, we still hear the raccoons. And we're like, what? And we've worked with this wildlife control company before, and they've been great. So I'm a little surprised to hear that. So we send them back for another $100, and then they do they do something around the perimeter of the house, and they did something around whatever, another $100. And then we call them up and we say, hey, we've sent the guy twice now. Is this fixed to your satisfaction? They're like, no, we still hear him. And we're like, oh, frick, why do we even call? So like, we might stop calling that particular person back, right? But it's like, I mean, in general, it's like, call them up, say, hey, thank you for the call, we'll get somebody on it right away, and get somebody on it right away. Because what happens is, I think when a lot of people end up in lawsuits in this industry is because, they called their landlord and it was leaking and they never fixed it, and they called them 4 times and now I'm not going to pay rent. And it's like, the downside is so down, right? Just do it, get it done, make sure they're happy with it, and move on. So,
yep. That was huge right there. I know when I was first married, we moved into an apartment and it was February and our heat went out.
Oh, jeez.
And so we called and we went to our property management company, and we just got no response for days and days. Oh my God!
And it's heat.
In the coldest month of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, it went all the way to city council, and we got on the news.
Oh no!
I'm one of your worst nightmares as a tenant.
No. Because the landlord's the one that screwed that hole up.
They never responded to me. Like even when they fixed it, the heat's working. Oh, good. They didn't follow up.
They didn't say, we're going to be done Tuesday, and then they didn't call on Wednesday and say, is it fixed? And
there's no follow-up.
Exactly.
So that was actually a huge reason why I got into real estate. I was like, I'm sure I could do better.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Follow-up is huge.
How many years ago was that?
Oh, about 12 or 13 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's so many people. Here's one thing, too, is that I think, I don't know, this is totally off topic, but like, I think you need to get into with your associations. You know what I mean? Every city's got an association. Minnesota Multi-Housing Association is one that I'm on the board of, or Minnesota Real Estate Exchange is another good one. And it's like, just learn from all these people. There's so many people that treat this business as a hobby. But it's a highly regulated industry, right? Yeah. And I'm shocked with your experience. Maybe I'm not, but like, it's like they need systems you need systems, right? You're going to have a tenant call you and tell you there's a heat out. So what are you going to do when that happens, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have a tenant call you and they say they can't pay rent on time. What's your system?
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And while there's so many new experiences in this business,
exactly.
To a certain extent, there's nothing new. I mean, everything's been seen before. So you're right. You can prepare for these things and have a plan of action.
Yeah.
So wonderful.
I had a tenant pass away in one of my units a long time ago, like 2005 or 4, or 3. And then I had another tenant die, in one of my units, like, not too long ago, and it's like this stuff happens, right? I mean, people live in your houses, that people pass away sometimes, and whatever. I mean, you just deal with it. So
yeah, okay, well, wonderful. So right now I have a question from our audience. So I'm going to pull that up here.
Awesome.
Hey, John, Scott Jacklin here. First of all, I want to thank you for your videos. They are very helpful, add a lot of value, and I want to thank you for that. And now I have a question for you. We have some properties in Uptown that when we post them for rent, we get a lot of response. And my question to you is, how do you handle when you get a lot of response to a property? How do you find the best tenant out of the 10 or 15 or 20 that are interested in leasing up your unit? That's something that would definitely be of value to us. Thanks. Bye.
Good question. A little bit of a scary question because 2 things. Number one, your rent's probably too low if you're getting that many options. If you're getting just overwhelmed with calls. Okay. Number 2 is, so I'd probably raise the rent. Now you can't raise the rent and do a bait and switch thing where like, oh well, we he sounds like he has a bunch of properties, so maybe raise it on the next one. Or what we've done sometimes is we'll put an ad out for like $1,000 and we'll get like 20 calls or 30 calls, and it's like, whoa, wait a second, that's too much, right? Or it's too many people. So we'll raise the rent on that unit to $1,100. But we'll say, hey, if they called in on the $1,000 ad, we're going to honor that. I mean, for gosh sakes, right? We're not going to say, oh, sorry. So I would honor the rent for sure, but maybe raise it for any future calls. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is really, because of federal fair housing laws, you have to take the first person that is approved. So the first person that comes in to your building that fills out an application in full, it pays the application fee, you need to run that application, and if they qualify, and they get the apartment. If somebody else comes in after them and they have a better credit score or they're or whatever, then they you don't give it to them and say, I like this person better, because you're opening yourself up for a discrimination lawsuit. The other thing though is that there's a little bit of subjectivity to leasing for some people, right? I'd say if somebody comes in and is totally rude to your staff, but they have a 700 credit score and they, good rental history and they make the correct amount of money, then it's like, you know what, we're denying this person based on the fact that they were a total jerk. And these are the reasons that they were a total jerk. They yelled at us, they spit in my face. I mean, I don't know what it is, but like, then you need to document that stuff and say, this is the reason we're not renting to them, and have actual documentation. Not that we just like this one better than the other one. So that's where I think, you need to get involved with your associations and really and learn the federal fair housing laws.
Yeah.
So that's how I deal with that.
Very good. So number one, making sure your rent is where it needs to be. That's huge.
Yep.
And then having kind of processes and systems so that you can, have the criteria set up so that when somebody can be approved, and then approve that person.
Yeah, so what we do is we actually have a rental requirements page, which everybody should have, right? And I can help. If anybody wants these documents, John, they can reach out to you, and I can forward it to them or whatever. But, we have a rental requirements page, which is like, it has a minimum credit score. Now, some of that's going to change because of the city of Minneapolis, although I don't own anything in Minneapolis. But we have a minimum credit score. We have a positive rental history. We have no evictions allowed, for the last some number of years. We have no felonies allowed for a certain number of years. We have no bankruptcies allowed for a number of 7 years or whatever, So I forget all of them, but that's basically them. And, and then you have to make a certain amount over the rent, right? So anyways, we have this rental requirements, and they sign it. The applicant actually signs it. So they're like, hey, if you meet this, you're approved, And a lot of times I'll coach them, and I'll say, I won't coach them, but I'll say, hey, make sure you meet these, because I don't want to waste your $35, honestly. Like, I don't make any money off the $35. It goes to the screening company. So number one, you can't make money off your application fee. Number two is that I don't want to waste somebody's $35, because $35 to me is a lot of money, So it's like, here's the rental requirements, and then here's the application. So I would have rental requirements as well.
Yeah.
So
wonderful. Well, that's lots of good stuff. I would just talk to our audience quick and mention thanks first of all to Scott for submitting that question. And we really like having questions from our audience. It kind of makes the conversation a little bit more dynamic and interactive. So if anybody else has a burning question for their, how to deal with something in their own rental properties, be sure to check the show notes. I've got some instructions of how you can submit a question. So,
awesome.
All right. So next I want to talk about maintenance and capital improvements. What's a way that you kind of track the materials and appliances and just different things that are in your property so that, when something breaks or when something needs to be upgraded, you're not kind of scrambling thinking, oh, what paint color was that? What sheen do I use?
Yeah, good question. And I hope my dad never listens to this podcast because he's been talking about this for years. And we've never done it. So he's always says we need a list of appliances in each unit, what year they were purchased, so we can go into that unit, via Google Docs and see when. How old is the refrigerator? If the tenant's calling and saying that refrigerator isn't working, do we send a repair guy or do we send a new refrigerator? If it's 10 years old, you send a new refrigerator. If it's 1 year old, you send a repair guy, So I don't have the best system with that. What we have done, though, which we have done well, is we have one paint color. Now, we just changed it. It was sand fossil. Every unit out there is sand fossil. It looks like sand, I guess. It's a beautiful color. We just switched to a new gray, which is a gray color, and now we're switching all our units over to that. So paint-wise, absolutely, you need some sort of paint scheme. Because in Duluth, we used to let the tenants paint it. And what happens is when you're a tenant and you're going to paint it and you're only going to live there for a year, you're going to try some cool color like hot pink or, super dark blue, or something like that. If you're going to move into it with your family and you don't want to paint again in 10 years, you're going to pick more of a neutral color, right? So what happened is we ended up with all these goofy colors in Duluth. So now what we do is we just do everything in new gray and it's a great color and it's beautiful, right? So that's how we handle paint colors. Regarding everything else, we just don't have enough units to really worry about it as much as I think, and we're pretty quick to pull the trigger on new appliances. It's expensive to send a maintenance guy for a new refrigerator, so it might be $150 or maybe $200 to repair a refrigerator. That costs $500. It's like, yeah, but if you buy a new fridge, then it's $500 and it's new, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's probably more energy efficient, all sorts of things.
Usually those come with a warranty.
Usually, yeah. And then the other thing is a lot of people, we were really, really slow to do the stainless steel thing. And we're still pretty slow to do it, but anytime we renovate a unit now, we go to stainless steel because it's not that much more expensive. Mm-hmm. And then as far as appliances go too, tenants really like dishwashers. So if you don't have a dishwasher in your unit for about $400 or $500, you can buy a portable one. It might be a good way to go, and then get that people in there.
Yeah.
So
well, that kind of touches on my next question, which is what kind of capital improvements do you select to make sure that you're attracting the best tenants?
Yeah, that's another really, really good question, and there's no easy answer to that, right? Now, that's what I like about condos, okay? A condo, you can go in and gut the thing and put it back together for $15,000, okay? I mean, $12,500 if you're really careful, And I mean, it's just nice to know that, right? So you hire a vendor that can do the kitchen. So a kitchen and an appliance for a kitchen and an appliance package for a condo is almost exactly $5,500. And now that's with you tearing it out. So your maintenance person has to tear it out, or you have to tear it out. But I mean, that thing just shines after that, right? Another, putting new carpet in is going to be $2,500, or new solid surface flooring. Most companies, that's another advantage I have, is that because I sell blinds to apartment buildings, I'm always in brand new apartment buildings, so I can see what the new trends are. It's kind of fun, and I can incorporate that some stuff with mine. One company called I think it's Aimco out of Denver. They have like 30,000 units, or maybe more. Maybe it's 60 or 90. I don't know. It's a huge number of units. They don't have any carpet in their buildings, They're putting the luxury vinyl tile down. So it's like, okay, if that's what the big guys are doing, just do that. Like, you don't have to, debate it really hard. Just do it, right? Yeah. And if you find a good vendor, and you can typically find good vendors through the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association or whatever association you have, right? And then have them do that stuff. So, the other way we handle capital improvements in condos specifically is you pay a reserve every month. So the association will actually pay into reserves a certain amount. So one of my associations, the condo pays about $500 a year per unit into the reserve account. Okay, That's awesome, right? It's kind of like forced savings for roofs and parking lots and things like that. When you're doing it as an apartment building, my apartment building, it kind of catches you off guard. You're like, oh, crap, we got to pay put a new parking lot in. Well, really, we should probably be reserving just like that into things. But I tell you what, I don't know anybody that does it,
Yep.
So what I would do, I guess, is when you buy it, fix it up immediately and just be done with it. Consider it a part of the purchase price.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a huge thing going back to the business planning discussion.
Yeah.
Condos are a great example of how they plan ahead for these capital improvements because they're going to need that roof or that heater or whatever, the windows.
Yep.
And so in a condo situation, you're kind of forced to plan for it. But you're right. Rental owners just ignore it. And then when it comes up, they're like, oh, man, $30,000 for this.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Well, anybody else could have seen it.
Where did it come from? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's just huge, actually creating a reserve account for your rental units and actually putting stuff into it.
I had a house in Duluth. I have a house in Duluth that I put a new roof on. And I put a new roof on probably 5 or 10 years ago, But the guy that I hired, that's a nightmare of a story. But, well, I'll tell you real quick. So the guy wanted 50% down. He tears the roof off. The tenants call back. This is probably before I had my office person. The tenants call back. They're like, hey, is that guy coming back? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's not done. They're like, no, he tore the roof off like 2 weeks ago, and he never showed back up again. Well, I found out he went to jail. So after I'd already paid him my 50% down. So I hired another guy. That guy came in and nailed it incorrectly, basically, So he did a poor job installing the roof. So then we had a bunch of wind damage in Duluth. Well, I couldn't get a claim on my insurance because it was installed improperly. So then I just had to hire another company to come in and just do it. And this was all painful and all expensive and all everything, And it is what it is. But I mean, there's so many lessons there. Like you should be reserving, for expenses. Like you're saying, that roof every single day that roof is getting, one day closer to the end of its usable life. So just because you spent, $10,000 on a roof, 10 years ago, if it's, a 20-year roof or whatever, or say 10-year roof for easy math, that's $1,000 a year. That adds up, right? So that's just for the roof. So why not be putting that away, at least mentally, if not physically? So.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, one thing I want to talk about and highlight in this show is just how, despite all the benefits of having real estate, there are some challenges.
Yeah.
And, there's always something new, something that makes you kind of pull your hair out. Any stories come to mind that just say only in rental properties? Wow, what am I doing here?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I actually think you have to be really careful in rental properties, right? And you have to be really careful in the fact that you don't burn yourself out. Because what happens is, if you own one house, okay, you do everything and, whatever, right? You may have an eviction every 5 years or 10 years or I don't know. But if you have 65 units, you're always dealing with one or two people that just drive you crazy, right? But you got to remember it's maybe one person, right? You got to remember there's 64 other people, or maybe there's 100 other people because you got some multiple tenants, So you might have 1 out of 100 tenants that is a challenge. But you got 99 great tenants, you know what I mean? And you really, really, really got to keep reminding yourself that, hey, this is just one person out of the group, right? And they might have some other things going on, maybe they've got some mental health issues going on, or maybe they've got some other problems, maybe they lost their job, it's we want to be compassionate, but we also have a lease to follow, So I think you have to keep reminding yourself that you have 99 good tenants, or 99% of your tenants are awesome. This one challenging tenant is maybe just going through but how do you manage that one tenant? So there's two ways to do that, right? Number one is you got to force yourself to talk to the people that never call. Okay. If a tenant never calls and always pays rent on time, we're not calling them and saying, hey, thanks for paying rent on time. And I think you have to force yourself to do that. Just touch base with them and, maybe once a quarter or once a year even. I don't know how often the magic number is, but just call them up and say, hey, thanks for always paying rent on time. 2, thanks for being a tenant. And 3, is there anything I can do for you? Or send them a thank you card or, $5 Starbucks card. Again, these people are paying 30% of their income to you, right? A $5 Starbucks card costs nothing. In my other business where I sell blinds to apartment buildings, if somebody's going to give me a huge contract every year, I'm going to be taking them out to lunch, taking them out to the ball game. I'm going to do all sorts of things. Why wouldn't I be doing that similar thing? Maybe not that scale, but similar thing with apartment, people. So there's a few things that have been making me pull my hair out, but the number one thing comes down to communication. If a tenant's not going to communicate with you or lie to you, then I think you need to pull the Band-Aid off and part ways with them. I had one tenant. I think there's creative ways to handle that. But I had one tenant that owed rent, and I was in Arizona for Christmas, with my family, and she's, I'm dealing with this tenant, and I'm saying, hey, what do we need to do to just be done? She's like, well, I'm going to get you some money, and here I'm going to send it to you, Western Union, and it's down at Western Union, so I drove down to Western Union, and it's not there, and then I call her up, and this is going on for like days, or weeks, and I mean, I don't know if you can, I'm not in her situation. So like, I'm sure she was strapped for cash and didn't know what else to do and all that stuff. So, I mean, I do feel for her situation a little bit, but one way to handle that kind of stuff, I think you need to do as a professional landlord, you need to figure out a way to part ways with some people, and legally, I mean, and so what we did is I told her, I said, I tell you what was it take you to get out of this place? And she said, well, I tell you what, all I need to do is I need to, I don't know how to move my stuff. I have a place to stay, but I don't have a place to put my stuff. And I said, well, you know what? As a landlord, after they move out, you have 28 days, and then you can dispose of their stuff, but you don't want to do that, right? I mean, it's just, you just want to minimize the pain, right? For everybody involved. So what we did is she moved out, and then I hired my maintenance guy and myself and my dad again, who we went over there on a Saturday, and we took all our stuff, and she was going to help, but she never showed up, or she showed up late or something like that. She was going to bring a bunch of people, but I borrowed a truck, and I had a trailer, and we took all our stuff out, and we put it in storage, and then I paid for the first month of storage for her, and then she took over the lease in the storage unit. And we all parted with friends, you know what I mean? So I think that's how you handle that kind of stuff, is like you just, you don't throw all their stuff out in the yard, one that's illegal, and, maybe even try to avoid eviction, because that's not fun for anybody. It's expensive, and it's hard for them to find a new apartment, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think if you can handle it from a creative way, then you can manage through that stuff.
Yep. So let's turn that coin on its head and talk about what has been like the biggest benefit of being a landlord and having rental properties.
That's a very good question. I think the biggest benefit is probably freedom. I mean, passive income is phenomenal, right? Like guys like you and I, or probably everybody listening to your podcast, it's easy. Active income is easy because we can all go to Domino's today and get a job delivering pizzas, and I can work 80 hours a week delivering pizzas, and I can spend another 20 hours a week working, raking lawns, and I can clean houses. I mean, you can go work at McDonald's. I mean, active income is easy, right? The hard thing is figuring out how to create passive income. And passive income would be my definition of passive income is income that you don't have to work for every day. I'm not saying you never have to work for it, but you don't. It's not an everyday demand. Like today, I would be surprised if more than 2 people called us. That means 63 units today are passive income. And that's what I think is the hugest advantage is passive income.
Nice.
And freedom. So
That's huge. I think a lot of us, or all of us, are after that passive income and freedom. So
totally agree.
So yeah. Wonderful. So, looking forward into the real estate market that we're in, we just talked about earlier how prices are crazy high.
Yeah.
And along with that, rental rates are high, which has been great for us. In your experience for like how long it's taking to lease up a place, do you feel like this is going to continue on, or I'm not expecting you to be an expert economist.
Oh,
but...
I got it all figured out, actually.
Oh, well,
you want to know?
You
want to know the answer? So here's my theory on the whole thing: is that millennials watch their parents get hammered in the real estate industry, growing up, right? And that's not with 100%, certainty, but millennials on it in general watch their parents go through the 2008, 9, 10 crisis, right? They're like, why would I ever want an apartment, or a house, right? And there's a lot of advantages to renting, right? You don't have to, if you want to move, you just move, right? You just give your notice to move. If you want to move and you own a house, you got to sell the thing. What I think is going to happen is that the average age of a millennial right now is like maybe 28, something like that. If that person gets married and has a kid, let's say gets married at 30 and has a kid at 32, then the average millennial will be looking to buy a house, or at least the trend will start to go towards houses. Because there's a lot of advantages to houses too. You secure your payment for as long as you negotiate your mortgage. You have a bigger yard potentially and all this stuff. You move into the school district that you want. And all that stuff. So right now, the home ownership rate is the lowest it's ever been since like 1965. Okay. I think things go in ups and downs. Okay. Right now we're at a down in the home ownership rate. So what is going to happen is when millennials are 32, in my opinion, in about 4 years, people are going to start buying more properties. And then the mindset of the country is going to shift from renters to owners. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Okay. So that's going to decrease the demand for rentals?
It'll decrease the demand for rentals. It'll decrease the occupancy rate. And as soon as the occupancy rate decreases, then people have to put up concessions, meaning like they'll have to give away 1 month free rent to get somebody into their apartments or something like that. So that's so then that's going to increase the economic vacancy as well. So yeah, it'll affect our industry. For sure.
Okay. So you heard it here first from Brian Doyle.
Well, if you say it long enough, it's eventually you're right. So.
Well, for the next 4 years, we're going to experience some rent growth, but after that, it's going to fall off.
Yeah, and I think it'll be more of a gradual, plateau, and then I think it'll start falling off.
Yeah.
So that's my theory.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Brian, we've covered quite a bit here. I do need to get this wrapped up, but just a couple of closing questions so that the audience can kind of get to know you a little bit better. First of all, why do you get up in the morning?
Good question. I learned a long time ago, probably in Cub Scouts, that I want to be the best whatever that I'm doing. If I'm in an association, I want to be the president of it. If I'm in a salesperson, I want to be the number one salesperson for that company. If I have tenants, I want to be the best landlord. I want them to leave that relationship saying that was the best landlord I've ever had in my whole entire life. And that's what really gets me up in the morning. Like I love it's not really success. I just love I love the game. It's fun for me, and maybe I'm a people pleaser. Maybe that's what it is. But really, I love action. Right? Like, what did you accomplish today? Every day I want to sit down and say I accomplished something today. So that's kind of what gets me up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and looking back in your life, what is the event or person in your history that has been pivotal about creating who you are today?
Oh, that's a great question, because I do think you're a summary of your experiences. there's a lot of people, that have been really pivotal in my life. I mean, the easy answer is my parents, right? I mean, I was really, really lucky to grow up with a good family, that loved me, that supported me, and that's continued to support me. So, that they're the easy answer, and they're, probably the most, they probably have the most influence over that. There's a lot of really good friends that I've had over the years that I've learned from. And there's a lot of good friends now. I mean, I'm thinking back in the day, a friend of mine, Scott Sailors, was really pivotal in who I am. He seemed to enjoy every moment of his life, which was awesome. And then now, I mean, I try to hang out with the people that really, I view as the leaders in the industry. I mean, Stuart Simick's one of them that I can think of. Kurt Flugel's one of them, there's just a bunch of people. Jennifer Spadini, I know a lot of your people that have been on the show. I just think that, you become who you hang out with. And I've got another story about that, maybe a different day, but you really become the people you hang out with, and you better look around at your friends and decide, are these people that I admire? And if not, you really need to find some new friends, honestly.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so, and if anybody that's been listening to this wants to get in touch with you, kind of learn more about your philosophy on management, and just pick your brain about that, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, I like email. I know people hate email, but I like it because you can do it at any time of the day or night. And my email is Brian, which is Brian, Doyle, or excuse me, Brian at DoylePropertyGroup.com. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I want to thank you again, Brian, for coming into the studio today and spending this time with us.
Thank you, John.
Just a small gift as my token of my appreciation is the Maximizing Your Property Value
that's
official
so cool.
mug.
Oh, wow. I love it, man. This is awesome. I drink coffee every morning. Thank you.
Good. Well, that kind of answers
awesome.
my question. I was going to say, more likely to put coffee or hot chocolate in there?
Oh, yeah, coffee for sure. And
Okay.
then, hot chocolate too, I guess. I don't know. All of the above. No, that's very nice of you, John. Thanks. And thanks for doing this, man. I think this is a highly regulated industry, and people need to learn about it. And it's a great way to learn about it is through these kinds of things. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming in, and all the best to you.
Yeah, thanks, John.
All right. Bye now.
The opinions shared on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be taken as a solicitation for representation or investment in any specific offering. Please consult with your financial, legal, tax, and real estate advisor before making any investment decisions. John Stiles is a licensed Minnesota real estate agent with Bridge Realty. Thanks for tuning in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. If you're considering scaling up, downsizing, or right-sizing your real estate investment portfolio, it's important to know how to determine your property's value in today's market. That's why I've put together a free ebook for you called How to Calculate Your Investment Property's Value. To get your copy, go to www.realestatestyles.com/value. Now, if you found any value in today's show, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, YouTube channel, and podcast through your favorite podcast player. All the links are in the show notes. And would you do me a big favor? Help me get the word out about this show by sharing with your friends on Facebook and LinkedIn. And lastly, we appreciate your 5-star rating on iTunes. I really appreciate you and wish you the best in your real estate investing career. Signing off, I'm John Stiles with Bridge Realty. Make it a great day.